Well, I'm going live kind of spontaneously today. I didn't let anybody know, so some people may join us live or you just catch the recording whenever you can. Getting the camera set up correctly. How are folks doing? Welcome back into another installment episode of Dr. Darnise's House of Religion, Magic, and Conjure. What's good? I always start my classes, uh, what's new and exciting? And they sit there, they're like, So, anyway, I wanted to come on and I'm going live because I just had a few things that came to mind I wanted to talk about. And one of them is that the PBS is airing a special coming up here, I think February 16th, called The Black Church. And hey, Phoenix Conjures. Um, I'm going to see if I can. Let me see what I'm trying to do here. Multitask at the same time. Let me see. Yeah, PBS is having a special called The Black Church um, coming up on February 16th. I think it's going to be 3 episodes. And, you know, I just think to myself, it's the same old thing. It's the same old story. Why is it, why is it that when people talk about black religion, it's always the black church, that whole monolithic thing, as if we're just one people and we all black people do religion the same and it's the same sense of plantation. And um, I can't take it anymore. Is what I'm trying to say. And as much as I, cannot hate on my scholarly friends and the whole discipline of religion for, getting funding from PBS and making it available to the general public to, educate the world about black people and black religion, black history, especially considering these days. But what I would prefer to see is that we push the envelope, that we move forward, and that we start to talk about black religion as opposed to just the black church. So as I always say to my students, don't just think of, when I say I'm a religion scholar, people often say, oh, that means you're a Christian and you're going to talk about Christianity. I'm like, did I say black Christianity or did I say black religion? Religion is a broader category than Christianity, right? So, in looking at the trailer, Henry Louis Gates, Harvard, professor, very well regarded professor, very well known in the media, Henry Louis Gates. He also does the show Finding Your Legacy. What's it? The Ancestry show. He does with different celebrities and tells them their roots, finding their roots. One of those kind of shows, y'all. Finding Their Roots, I think it's called. So he's a well-known scholar, and he gets money periodically from PBS to do these specials. And so I'm just a little bit irritated that he, as somebody who's been in the discipline for years and years and years as a historian, is still doing the same story, telling the same story about black religion. Meaning, it's still the same story about black Christianity only and the black church. And he knows better because he's a historian and he knows better. And so when are we going to push the envelope and better educate black people and the whole world about the diversities of African American religions? Right? Part of the reason I have this channel, Religion, Magic is Conjure, and Conjure, is to talk about the diversities of African American religions, not just African American Christianity, not just the black church. I want to see a broader stroke. I want to have people to be educated about, what is hoodoo, what is conjure, what are black people doing, and but what about black Buddhists? What about, black atheists or black humanists? Like, you feel my frustration. I'm so frustrated, but I'm going to watch it, right? I'm going to watch the Black Church. I'm going to watch it because I'm going to ask my students, my university students, to watch it. Maybe they're going to surprise me and do something a little more, a little extra, but I don't think so because they're calling it the Black Church. And so if you only call it the Black Church, there's really only so much you can do. And in the trailer already, I see them going to the plantation and talking about gospel music and talking about how, the Black Church was the only thing Black people had. So it had to be everything for us. Yes, we know. And then what? Or what about those African people who were on the plantation who actually maintained some form of Islam? Because some African people who were brought over were Muslim, and we have record that some of them managed to maintain some of their Muslim practices. And we want to see about that. Like, wouldn't that be interesting for people to find out? Wouldn't that be interesting? Because so many people will be like, what? I never knew that. If you're old enough to remember Roots when it first came out, or you've ever seen it, there's a little snippet of some enslaved people on the plantation with a prayer rug out on the ground, and they talk about praying 5 times a day, and they talk about their people having been Muslim. It's a snippet that long. We need to know that. The whole world needs to know that, because I have, along with some of my friends and colleagues, taken on the position that we have to re-educate. We have to be part of those who re-educate, help to re-educate the whole world about the contributions of African people. And we are doing it through talking about African American religions and spirituality, or African diaspora spiritualities. African diaspora spiritualities. And so for me, I'm focused primarily on African American, hoodoo, and, but even some Vodun, Santeria, Lukumi, Afro-Brazilian stuff. So in the Americas. And because I'm interested in that and telling that kind of story, I get bored with just the Black church story over and over again and think we're not doing justice. We're not educating people. So that means that the colonizers' version of Africa and of African people remains the dominant narrative, right? If we are not learning about ourselves, if those of us who are educators in various ways are not educating ourselves, then there's no way that any other people are going to come to appreciate what Africa is or ever was. But we live in a time now where at least young people are so over it in terms of institutional religion. So many young people don't want to go to church no more, right? It's not really helping them. They don't feel a connection to it, but they do want to know about these indigenous practices. They do want to know about African spiritualities. They want to know, right? So we got to do better by them. We have to start really educating them, and by educating ourselves, we re-educate the whole world. So that's a bit of my frustration, y'all, in terms of the Black church as a program on PBS. It's double-sided for me because, again, I'm glad anytime anybody, puts out in the mainstream something about Black people, but something positive and educational. But at the same time, my God, when are we going to re-educate the world so that they can appreciate the breadth and depth of African contribution, so that people know about ancient African civilizations, so that people know that Egypt is called Kemet, so that people know that Egypt is part of Africa and we don't have to continually explain geography to people. Do y'all realize how ridiculous it is that we have to continually remind people that Egypt is part of Africa? It is literally on the map, and yet we still have to continue to tell people and prove it somehow, right? We have to continually prove And it's just mind-boggling and ridiculous that we would have to keep doing that. And so this is why I'm taking on the position of like, yeah, I got to be part of, helping to re-educate the world from my little place on the planet as an educator. Then I'm going to talk about African diaspora religions and African civilizations. I saw a video recently. I don't know what I was looking at exactly, but they showed it was as a map of Africa, and the point was they were showing the Middle East, whatever video this was. I can't quite remember what I was watching because I watch a lot of videos. And so anyway, they were showing a map of Africa, and but they had a circle around the Middle East, and it included like so much of Northeast Africa. Like just shamelessly, the Middle East includes all this part of Africa too. And so that just goes unchecked. It's almost unconscious that people just generation after generation receive that message and they don't think, okay, no, Egypt isn't part of Africa. And then when you tell them, you have to like convince them. Anyway, that's my bit of a rant. Here we go again. What else do I want to talk about? Okay. Why I do esoterica, magic, and conjure. Why do these things matter? Because very specifically, I am not only just talking about, in general, Black religions. On this channel, I talk specifically about the esoteric, religion, magic, and conjure. The esoteric, the lesser known, the so-called occult that we've all been told is bad, right? Oh, hey, I appreciate the like. Thank you. Hey, I should say something about the logistics of how I'm doing these lives now. Please like. YouTube likes the algorithm, or YouTube's algorithms like it when you like. And so I like that too. Feel free to add to the comments. I appreciate that. That's me from my other channel right now saying something. And y'all see you can give me a super chat. I'm not really sure. Okay, I should just do that and see what happens if I do it. Custom emoji. I'm going to say something to myself. Hello again. See what happens. Oh no, I guess I need to pick an emoji to share. Okay. Yeah, y'all, you can, now I've got all kind of fancy things for my your lives. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can also hit the $ and, you could also join and become a house member. All these different things I got going on here. So I'm also looking at myself, the channel on the computer. That's what I'm looking at here, and looking at all the things that are going on. Well, that's cool. YouTube has opened up some things. But anyway, back to what I was saying about the esoteric. The esoteric meaning, the hidden, the spiritual practices that you have to go within, where you have to apprentice, where you have to, really study. In the ancient times, they used to call it, you'd go to the mystery schools, right? You would go and you would study under somebody to find out these universal principles, these universal laws, and how to use them, right? So we call those things magic now, how to use them. And again, the African people get left out of these conversations. The ancient African traditions get left out. I watch a lot of videos about, and this is, for teaching and for learning what other people are doing. There's a lot of videos here on YouTube about ceremonial magic, the Western esoterics, Western ceremonial magic. And that's fine for what it is, but you have to realize it's European, and that's fine. But it is mind-boggling to me how Western ceremonial high magic, European magic, is clearly based upon Egyptian/African spiritualities, because all of the stuff that they'll go back to, they'll go back through John Dee and Agrippa, and all of these people, all of these Greek philosophers, they'll end up going into all of these this Greek material, and they'll go all the way back into Egypt, into that Greco-Roman Egypt, and they'll say, well, this is where it comes from. This is how we know that it's real and true, because it goes back to even the Egyptians had this. And so the Greeks ended up building upon what the Egyptians had in terms of religion, magic, spirituality. So what I'm saying here is the Western esoteric ceremonial magic is based upon the Egyptian, which they understand to be European Egypt. There's no connection that Egyptian religion and spirituality that they're connecting into is actually African. It's a product of the entire Nile Valley civilization, which includes what we call today the Sudan, right? Nubia. This whole region of Africa is somehow ignored. And as the generations go on and on, of course, people just don't know anymore. They just say, oh, this stuff comes out of ancient Egypt, but they're already using Greek names when they talk about Egypt. They're already referring to African ideas by Greek names. I hope you get what I'm saying here. So my mentor, should he watch this, is always pointing out, if you don't know the language, you can't even think straight about a topic. So if you are studying Egypt, Egyptian religion, Egyptian anything, you're studying about the pharaohs, but you're already using the word Egypt instead of Kemet. If you're already thinking that Egyptian culture has Cleopatra's face on it, if you're thinking Egyptian means Greco-Roman Egypt, then you can't even think about Africa. You get what I'm saying? Like somebody say, yeah, I understand, or no, what you talking about? If you can't think in an African way, then you can't see Egypt for the African nation it was and is. You're already peering at Egypt through Greek and Roman lenses. My point being, the ceremonial magic that is the basis for Western ceremonial magic, which comes out of Greco-Roman philosophy, going back to Egyptian spirituality, they're cut off already from the African history, and they don't even know it. Is my, like, to me, just it works my nerves. They don't even know it because of the whitewashing about Africa, because Egypt has already been removed from Africa. So when these people are studying, these people meaning the ones doing European-based ceremonial magic, when they're doing that, they're not aware that this is based upon African spirituality. They think they're going to Greece. You get me? They think they're going to the Greco-Roman tradition, a European tradition. The Egypt they know is Europe for all they know. And they don't know the African. And it frustrates me, so I'm ranting today, ranting about this. So then I want to continually stay teaching about the esoteric and religion and magic and conjure, because it's important that the African presence be there, because we can't wait for somebody else to do it. It's like the Black nationalists always have said to us, you can't wait for white people or European people to tell you your history accurately. Thank you, Phoenix Conjures. We have to decolonize our views on Africa. It makes totally great sense. Thank you for saying so. We cannot wait for Europeans to tell us our history accurately. nor can we expect that they will. Because at this point in time, most don't even know any connection, anything about African history. Most people just don't. What we have now is an understanding of Africa as a place where people are poor and destitute, and that's still the main narrative. Even though we see thriving cities in Ghana, Nigeria, Tanzania, wherever, South Africa, we see these places are thriving, but still in people's consciousness, Africa is a place where people are starving and in constant need of European or Chinese handout, because we've all been colonized in our education about Africa, so we can't even ask the question about ancient African civilization. People resist it. People resist knowing that there were African civilizations before the Greeks and the Romans even got to northern Africa. They resist it when you tell them. And that's how thoroughly indoctrinated we've all become in our colonized education. So it's up to us, right? It's up to me, because I've taken on the mantle, the challenge. But it's up to us to say, oh, I can't wait on European people or Euro-American people to tell me about my history and expect that they're going to want to do it or do it accurately. We have to do that for ourselves. We are African people throughout the diaspora, and we have to do for ourselves in terms of education, educating ourselves about who we are and where we came from. Again, my mentor says to me, stop worrying about what they're doing and just focus on what you need to do. Stop focusing on what they're doing and start doing what you need to do. And I repeat that because he repeats that to me all the time. Like, y'all know this impeachment hearing that just happened and how, 45 was acquitted. And, he reminded me, I mean, many of us kind of knew, right? He's like, oh, this is what they do, though. This is what they do. We can't be surprised at that. You can't expect that people who benefit from empire are going to undo their own empire. And part of maintaining their empire is keeping the average person in a certain kind of ignorance. It benefits the people who run empire when the masses are ignorant. And so for Black people, African descent people, we have to be very intentional about educating ourselves about who we are and not just complain that we don't have certain things in schools. You're not going to get it in school. Your kid is only going to get, about the civil rights movement. They're going to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. and maybe something about Malcolm X. I asked my students last week in class, in the religion class, what do y'all know about Malcolm X? I said, I'm so curious. What do y'all know about Malcolm X? Now, these students are college students. They're about 19 years old, 19, 20 years old. I said, what do you know about Malcolm? No, nothing. He was very militant. He was like somebody said the anti-Martin Luther King Jr. He was kind of the militant one. I said, well, what else? Well, I've seen pictures of him with a gun and a picture and a word, the caption that said, by any means necessary. So I always thought that he was violent. This is what they've gotten because they haven't read anything. No, they haven't read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I said, you need to read that book and it'll change your worldview. At the very least, go watch the movie, Spike Lee's movie. So maybe some of them will. But my point is, at this point in time in 2021, most young people are only getting, even about something that in recent history like the civil rights movement, they just continue to get a sort of romanticized version about Martin Luther King Jr., right? They're not even getting a full picture of what the civil rights movement was or other leaders besides King. Maybe Rosa Parks, okay. But for the most part, they're not getting anything. They can't tell me anything about the Black Power movement, the Black Panthers, Malcolm X. They can't tell me anything like that. And so what they have come to just sort of receive in the ethers of America is that the Black Panthers were bad, Malcolm X was bad and violent, the Nation of Islam is anti-white. So So knowing that that's the main narrative, we have to take that back and say, okay, well, that's my responsibility to educate my own kids and each other, our communities, because when I send my kid to school, those that system is not set up to teach about true African history, not even adequate African American history. The school is not even set up to do that, right? So why are we? So then we as Black people, I think we get caught up in this, in the protest, in our indignation because it's not there, right? And we'll say, well, how come they're not being taught this? Why isn't this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this being left out? Why? And we're very angry about it. Okay, but be angry and then take it upon yourself to read a book a month, read with your kids, tell them something like, here, I'm going to read this book, you read that book. And at the end of the month, we're going to talk to each other about what it was about. What? Thank you. Is it Tahiri? Tajiri? We need to train our children in our homes. We need to be curious truth seekers. Exactly. We have to take it upon ourselves because the empire is not going to give us the tools to dismantle the empire. So as Black people, why do we continually get mad when they won't give us the tools to dismantle their empire? Why would they do that? They're not going to. And they've shown us historically they're not going to. They're not going to. Okay? They're not going to. So what are you going to do to educate yourself, your children, other people in your community who you come into contact regularly? At the very least, just be like, hey, go into Dr. Darnise's channel on YouTube or on Instagram. Or here, read the latest book from about Malcolm X. I got the new book called The Rising. It's a new biography on Malcolm X by Les Payne. Have y'all heard of it? I'll probably be on here talking about it soon. But it's a new biography about Malcolm X. I also have The Sword and the Shield, it's a new book. I don't know that it's really a biography, but about Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X by, gosh, what is his name? I'm looking at it right here, y'all. Oh, his name escapes me. That's too bad. But anyway, pick up some contemporary books. Pick up something historical. Let me see what y'all are saying. First, we need to wake up to the facts about the empire. Too many are asleep. Exactly. Exactly. That's why I'm using that term, right? Empire. Whatever government is in place, that is the empire. What is their main job? To keep the power. If I have the power and I'm empire, oh, I'm keeping it as, right? You just have to take it from my cold, dead hand, isn't what they say? I'm keeping it at all costs. And the only way you can get it from me is to take it. But you can't take it if you don't have enough fire in you to even know how much you're losing out. If you don't even know that I'm keeping you ignorant, you don't even know what you don't know, you will let me keep the power. But if you start to educate yourself and understand, oh, it's good to read books. It's good to know what came before me. It's good to know my ancestors because they left me something valuable, right? Survival, right? And so my point, we have to do that for ourselves and our own communities. Just recognize that the empire is not going to help you undo the empire. If we want to be viable in this world going forward as African people on this planet, we have to do it for ourselves. And the Black nationalists already told us that. The Black nationalists already said, look, don't wait for them to do it. We got to do it. People need to check out Black-owned bookstores and organizations like the Schomburg Center right in New York. Exactly. Thank you for all your contributions. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Tajiri or Tahiri? I don't know. But I appreciate you adding all this because exactly, we need to check out Black-owned bookstores and the Schomburg Center in New York or sometimes you got to go out of your way too. Sometimes you got to go out of your way to support Black. Tajiri, thank you. Tajiri. Sometimes you got to go out of your way to support. And sometimes you got to do things that are not the easy way. We like to watch things, video clips of everything, and we've forgotten the value of reading a book, reading an entire book. I've been reading a book, y'all, a biography on Alan Locke, the great dean of the Harlem Renaissance. If y'all don't know Alan Locke, please Google him. It's spelled ALAINLOCK. The great dean of the Harlem Renaissance era, one of our early leaders from the early 20th century, I should say, one of our, amazing leaders during the Harlem Renaissance era. The biography is almost 1,000 pages. And I've been reading it. I have not in any particular hurry to read it, but I'm just like, there's so much information in here. It's so rich when you read somebody's biography. And, I met the author of it, Jeffrey Stewart. He's another professor at UC Santa Barbara. And, so I had a chance to have some conversation with him about how long it took him to write it. And he said, oh, at least 10 years. Because, he was writing it and not in any particular hurry, but he wanted to be thorough, and he wanted to give a whole picture of Alan Locke's life and the influences upon him, right? So he managed to uncover this information about, his relationship with W.B. Du Bois, and, kind of compare his point of view to Du Bois, and his interaction with all of the artists who we know from the Harlem Renaissance, not all of them, but, significant ones. He gives us a snapshot of Alan Locke's interaction with people like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Jean Toomer, these Harlem Renaissance artists, which helps us understand that whole period more, Harlem Renaissance, and these individual artists who you might not know about, or you've only known a little bit because you read one poem here, or maybe you read Their Eyes Were Watching God from Zora Neale Hurston, but you don't have an idea or picture in your mind about the whole era, right? It's a wonderful era where Black people were really, creating an amazing amount of cultural production, artistic production. And anyway, as I said, the biography is almost 1,000 pages. So, people go, oh my God, it's so big. You don't have to sit down and read it at one time. Just read it a little bit at a time. Read it a little bit at a time. Just read, right? Being a lifelong learner is a must. Exactly. And that's how we have to be lifelong learners. If not, like I always tell my university students, if you don't educate yourself, other people are going to tell you what to think. Other people are going to run your life for you. They're going to let you think you're running your life as you line up to get the new iPhone or whatever it is. But really, they'll be running your life for you. And as Americans, we're always like, I have a right to do this, and I'm independent, and I'm a free person. Well, if you're not educated, you're not a free person, because you can only think within very small confines, a limited way of thinking. So, all this whole video is about expanding our mindset, expanding our intellectual territory, being very purposeful about doing so. One, because like this program coming out, Henry Louis Gates on PBS, The Black Church. Otherwise, you get the same story over and over and over. Issachar Bay, how you doing? Namaste. Otherwise, if you don't educate yourself, you get the same story over and over again, and you don't learn anything more. You don't know you can't become more empowered. You can't take more charge of your life because you know so little, because the empire is only going to tell you a little bit. So you have to take responsibility for broadening your own horizons. And you have to say, hey, I know that there's more to that. I'm going to pick up a book I would never have necessarily picked up before, and I'm going to learn about this. And if you're watching me, this is about religion, magic, and conjure. Pick up a book about this. I appreciate you watching me and learning from me, and I hope that I, continually give you things to think about and all of that. But, pick up some books on on Esoterica. Let's see, what do I have right here? Oh, I mentioned my mentor before, Dr. Will Coleman. And Issachar Bay, you might know him because you might have seen me talking to him on Facebook. Will Coleman, Tribal Talk, Black Theology, Hermeneutics, and African American Ways of Telling the Story. And it really is about, it's a theology text, and it's really about Vodun, that we come to know as voodoo, right? Pick up something and learn about, like, this is an African religion as opposed to what I've been told it is. Pick up, I don't know, y'all know I got all kind of things. I'm just showing you, right? Working conjure. You could just pick up, and it's not that. Pick up anything that will help you. This is a classic, Louisa Tish. Louisa Tish, Jambalaya, The Natural Woman's Book of Personal Charms and Practical Rituals. Y'all are, I keep saying the big house card from the, oh, yes, from the Hoodoo Care, okay. The big house. What are you saying? We definitely have to start really seeing the empire system for what it is and make the changes. Thank you, Phoenix Conjures, because that big house card in the Hoodoo Tarot deck is about, what did the big house represent on the plantation? How do you get free from the big house? The big house was like empire. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. But yeah, people keep asking me for, book recommendations, and, I don't want to give everybody like 1,000-page academic work, right? So I know you want something that's simple enough where you can assimilate it, fairly easily, and assimilate things in your daily or weekly practices. So Jambalaya is a really good one. The Natural Woman's Book of Personal Charms and Practical Rituals. And then to learn, got that book, Hazel said. And then to learn the context for things, right? So, when I talk about this tribal talk one and voodoo / Vodun, right? Voodoo, to learn the actual historical, cultural context. So when other people start telling you, oh, don't mess with that, that's from the devil or that's evil, you can school them and be like, you need to understand something about your own African spirituality and some African history before you step to me and tell me that everything African is demonic. Here, let me introduce you to something, right? And then you school them and say, maybe you should get this book called Tribal Talk and learn something, right? Because in this book, I assign actually chapter 2 of this book. Chapter 1 is called Pouring Libations, The Coming of the Vodun. Chapter 2, Root Work, or Reconjuring the Transatlantic Middle Passage, West African Roots of Religious Life in the African Americas, right? So it gives a context for how African people mixed their African religion in an American context and still came out with something that was life-giving and sustaining, right? So again, West African roots of religious life in the African Americas. How did we sustain ourselves and yet still have some Africanisms in our religions, that we could have something like Vodun in Haiti and in Louisiana? So we could have something like the Afro-Brazilian religions, right? Present day Benin, Homo Vodun. Tajiri is on it. I'm going to have to give you the gold star for the day. Present day Benin. Thank you. Anyway, again, I could be put. This is a really good book, y'all. Speaking of the Afro-Brazilian, since I mentioned the Afro-Brazilian Holy Harlots, y'all, I'm getting a phone call right now. That's my best friend too in Jersey. Too bad they got all that snow. Are y'all in the snow? Anybody here in the snow? I'm in LA. It's been like 68 degrees here today. You see, I got on short sleeves. Anyway, what I was saying though about this particular book, as I mentioned, the Afro-Brazilian context. This book is called Holy Harlots, Femininity, Sexuality, and Black Magic in Brazil. It's by Kelly E. Hayes. Holy Harlots, Femininity, Sexuality, and Black Magic in Brazil. And it's really good. I love this book, and when I assign it, my students actually do read it because they think it's going to be like sensational or whatever, and it kind of is. But they get interested because of the title. But it is about the working of the spirit, and in this case, uh, when the gods take over, when the gods mount, we say possession, but people get scared if you say the term possession. When the spirits take over, and what happens when you embody um, that spirit, right? And so it's a particular story, really. Kelly Hayes did this original research in Brazil, and so she's really following one particular woman's um, experience with a particular female deity and what that has meant for her life. And anyway, she's a spiritual root woman essentially in Brazil. And so it's a story about how that has affected her life. And it's great. So, anyway, I'm just giving y'all a few references because I'm just trying to encourage people to read broadly, educate yourselves, try to get the broader understanding. Try to get the broader contextual, historical context of what it is. People just fly off the handle at this point. Social media makes that so easy where people are just typing furiously, in response to something, knee jerk, without pause and reflection, without nuancing. We get cancel culture because it's like, oh, this person said something today. Okay, they're canceled forever. And I'm like, what? No. You have to have conversation with somebody and understand, like, what did they say exactly? Is that really what they said? What is the context in which they said it? Before you talk about throwing somebody out. I mean, I guess some people need to be thrown out, but you got to at least know, do they really, or is this just somebody else's opinion? We just, in the social media streets, people just, so I'm an educator. This whole video has really been about getting us some education so that when you go and watch, because I'm going to suggest that you go and watch The Black Church. Yes, go and watch The Black Church, PBS special, Henry Louis Gates, starting February 16th, I believe. But if you Google it, I'm sure you will find it. And I'll probably be back on here talking about it some more. It's good. If you don't know that information, it'll be a good foundation for knowing, for getting that historical information. But then, you want to know what else too, right? You want to know, what did African people do in other parts of the New World after we were brought here? Look, what were they doing in Brazil? Here's the Afro-Brazilian. How did we work with Vodun? How do you work with it, hoodoo, like in your everyday life right now, right? How do you do what your ancestors left for you? That's what I'm getting at. Oh yeah, who else has seen, speaking of like a little bit of information we get about the civil rights people, who has seen, what is it called? Judas and the Black Messiah, the new movie on, what is it? HBO Max. It just came out, I think, Friday. I think I started to watch it last night, but then I got a little tired, and so I was like, oh, I'm going to pause it and come back and finish it. Plus, it was just so much. It's hard to watch these things. As Black people in America, we watch so much about being terrorized by the police, right? Being terrorized by the empire. So, of course, this is a story about Fred Hampton from the Black Panthers and the Black, situated within the Black Power movement, and how the FBI was infiltrating and all of that went down. So there's Judas, right? The Judas figure, the one who is the informant, and the Black Messiah. And in this case, the Black Messiah is really Fred Hampton from the Black Panthers. He's presented that way. And so what happens when he gets betrayed? I mean, we know historically what happened. So again, not really a spoiler because you know what happens. But just to say why I paused it, one, it was late when I started watching it, but also I just started to feel the heaviness of like, I just don't feel like watching Black people in the shootouts with the police. I just really don't feel like watching that right now. So I didn't. But I'm just curious if any of y'all have started to watch that in terms of, getting educated. If you didn't know very much about the Black Panthers, um, or sometimes people will know just Huey Newton, or they'll know Eldridge Cleaver, but maybe you don't know that much about Fred Hampton, or what they were really about versus what we've been told they're about. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, named the Black Panther Party to be America's #1 enemy. How, how could that have been? This small group of black people was a threat, the main threat to this whole empire. I that's I'm almost speechless around that, because this great American empire thinks that this relatively small group of black people is its greatest enemy. But of course, we know J. Edgar Hoover was setting that up in the public imagination so that he could exterminate them, right? Um, it would be very easy to exterminate them once you've declared somebody or some group to be America's prime uh, enemy, a threat to national security, we say now. Once you've established them as a threat to national security, of course we can go in and just assassinate them all, and the rest of America will go, yep, they needed to be assassinated. So we know what J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI were doing when they called the Black Panther movement the greatest threat to America, setting the stage so they could just knock them out. Um, Again, I didn't necessarily want to watch all that right then, but needed history, yes, to Jerry. It is needed history, and I'm certainly going to go and I'm going to tell my students that they're going to go watch it, and they're going to have some discussion amongst themselves on the message board that we use, the online message discussion board, and because I want them to get acquainted with these figures from history, and I want them to do a little work with it, and they can do the work. So anyway, anything else? Anybody else want to say? Because I'm going to wrap this up. Been on here talking for 50 minutes. It's like a class. I feel like Lord, I talk for a living. Anybody want to? Let me see what's going on over here. I saw the movie today. It was very good. Really? Really was very good, because Reverend Issachar, because as I said, it seemed very hard to watch. What happened at the end? I mean, how'd you feel at the end? How'd you feel at the end? Was it like somebody stabbed you in the heart? Because I don't want to look at that if that's what the deal is. We've seen so much of that since 2000. I mean, just in our faces. So, um, yeah. What else is going on? Do y'all want to say? Oh, I did also want to say too about, if you join and become a house member here, I will be doing some members only lives, like I'm doing, for the general public, some lives on occasion. But as the house membership grows for people who are just in our own group, then I will be doing, one or two live sessions just for us. So if you want to hit that join button over there, I think the membership starts at like, I created a while ago, so it might be like $2, $2.99, something like that, if you join. I believe they left a lot out of it, Issachar Bay says. I believe they left a lot out of it, but it will be good for your students to watch and have a discussion. Okay. And what else? Seems like there's some other movie that I was kind of avoiding for similar reasons. Like, how much of this? Because y'all know, here it is Black History Month, so a lot of the streaming services are making more of the Black movies accessible. Um, and but we need stories about Black love, Black joy, Black thriving. That's what my new courses are. I have another membership for the women I coach. So if any of y'all are women and you want to work with me in coaching, It was it was Black women's empowerment, Black women's spirituality. So for that group, I'm really I'm really holding up the banner for us to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive and to live in a state of joy and some luxury. We need some luxury and to normalize Black women enjoying luxury. So that's that group. Okay. I know Yvonne Chirot. Thank you, Phoenix, for writing that. Black Magic Religion. That's on my bookshelf also. Yes, and that's very good. Yvonne Chirot, I know her. She's a professor at Swarthmore. As a matter of fact, she and I are supposed to do a collaboration. She asked me to come teach one of her classes, be a guest speaker via Zoom in one of her classes. So I've known her for a few years. Have I seen One Night in Miami? I have seen One Night in Miami. What else did Kathleen? I saw the movie. It was heartbreaking, but I think we all need to see it. And maybe it will reignite a desire in people to keep fighting the empire. Yeah, Kathleen, but we's tired. I know, right? It's both. It's like, yes, we have to keep fighting, but at the same time, we get tired. And then we have to pass this on to our young people like, okay, pick up the fight. Breathe. Okay. Then One Night in Miami. So, yeah, that was pretty good too. And at least we did get to see some Black people being proactive and pushing the envelope forward in terms of what we can be. If you didn't see that, that is on, what is that, Amazon Prime, I think. And it's basically one night, it's a conversation between Malcolm X, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, and Sam Cooke. So really informative. I thought it got off to a little slow start. So give it a minute, it'll pick up. And really interesting to see how these very prominent Black men at that time came together and kind of a think tank, where they were encouraging one another, also critiquing one another, pushing each other to be the best they could be, and understanding, now we have historical hindsight and understanding what happened to all of them, to each one of them. It's a little, nostalgic and melancholy, but for the most part, I think it's uplifting, and it reminds us that, yeah, we can do that kind of thing again. We can have those kind of think tanks, right? Ourselves. That's what I mean by, don't wait for the empire to give you permission. Don't wait for the empire to make space for you to do it. Don't wait for them to say it's okay. We got to do it. I've noticed the more we focus on Black joy, most of our people tends to stars feeling like all is well. I'm not sure what you mean, Kathleen. Did I miss a word? The more we focus on Black joy, most of our people tends to stars feeling like all is well. Start. Oh, I see. Most of our people tend to start feeling all is well. But Kathleen, what we gonna do? Just live among the tragedy? What is that term? Tragedy porn? Because we could watch, what is the name of the love story? The love story movie? Sophie's Love? Is that the name? Sylvie's Love. Sylvie's Love. That would be good to watch. A beautiful love story. No Black death or violence in One Night in Miami. Yep. It shows these men who are powerful Black men in One Night in Miami, and what they could be up to in terms of positive things that they're up to, and plotting not only the revolution, but plotting a way for Black people to thrive in America. So, but Kathleen, would it be bad if we felt like all is well? I mean, not all is well, but but well enough where we could breathe. Because it's hard to be Black in America and breathe. Don't we just want to breathe and have some joy and have some luxury? And we have to both, as it is now, which is what One Night in Miami does well. Okay. I know, because some black people will say, well, if you show black people doing well, then it's like, well, but what about the black people who are struggling and who don't have much? Well, yeah, we know that there are black people who are struggling and don't have much. We're not forgetting about them, and we keep, we keep, we stay in the justice fight. It's not like it's one or the other. It's not like we have to say, we don't have to pick. It's a spectrum of life. I mean, I don't know, what am I trying to say? I'm thinking of LeBron James at the moment because I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine about him. And, I guess he's on track to be the first black athlete billionaire. And y'all, I don't really follow sports that much or LeBron James that much, frankly. But I do know that he has opened some schools I'm about to say in Miami, in Ohio, because I'm from Ohio, so that's stuck in my mind. And he's in Akron, I guess. And so he's doing some really great things in Akron. And so as I think about one night in Miami, it's like a LeBron James could have been in that conversation they were having, because it's like, well, what do we do going forward? Let's come together. Let's plot our own revolution, which doesn't even mean we have to overthrow empire, but we create our own spaces. Again, like the black nationalists told us, let's create our own spaces. It's hard to be black in the white supremacy reality we live in, and we all know that, but if we are to move the needle, we have to stop dropping the ball or even slowing down the movement. But if we are to move the needle, we have to stop dropping the ball or even slowing down the movement. You're right, Kathleen. So I say, what is we gonna do, Kathleen? What are we gonna do? What we do is be more vocal and stop mincing our words. But what do we build, Kathleen? What do we build? I mean, I guess I'm interested in, yes, we fight the fight. Yes, we keep protesting. But at the same time, we have to build something of our own, because remember, they're not going to build for us. They're not going to build for us. So we have to do it. Remember that they never want us to have a black savior. Right. So we have to have multiple black saviors. So if they take one out or disable one of them, then we don't completely lose out, right? We regroup and we keep at it so we don't drop the ball. One thing that Malcolm and Cookie fought, Cook, Cookie, what? One thing that Malcolm and Cook fought about was Cook thought that black capitalists will save us. Oh, right. Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke had a big vision. If you know Sam Cooke's story, he wanted to have his own record empire, really, record company, and he had a really big vision about that. It makes me think of what Berry Gordy did with Motown. Like Sam Cooke had an idea for a Motown type of a thing, and you're right. It was like, let us have this thing, let us create this thing, and then we will all be okay, right? And this is an old argument, about capitalism, and do we seek our wellness within the empire, or do we destroy the empire altogether and start over like a Wakanda kind of thing? But yeah, it was like Malcolm was saying to Sam Cooke in the movie, look, man, because Sam Cooke had some, he had some trendy pop songs that weren't very deep. And Malcolm was like, what is that you making, right? Like, how are you going to make stupid, silly songs? Oh, it's all nice and sweet. Look at Sam Cooke making these stupid songs, right? And they kind of fought about that. But, Sam Cooke was like, well, hey, we got to make some money and do these things and do the things we want to do. We got to make some money and stay in the system enough to make the money. But and that's why I say it's not either or. I guess I'll say it like this. In the freedom struggle, you have to have people at all along the spectrum of the fight, of the struggle. That's where I'm going to come down. Spoken like a good Libra. It's like, no extreme. We got to have a spectrum. So some people are going to be the ones in the street who are brave enough to be in the street day after day, as long as they can sustain that. And then you have others who are the check writers, right? Who make a way for those who, let's say, get arrested and somebody got to bail them out. So somebody's got to have money so they can write checks for that. You also have to have people who are willing to sit down with the enemy, go to the White House or whatever house to sit down with the enemy to have conversation, because we're interested in trying to get more justice for us as a people all along the spectrum. So it's not an either or. It's like, okay, I got this duty, this one has that duty. Everybody has a role in the work, right? Everybody has a role in the movement. And let us not hate on each other for our roles. Capitalism did save Tulsa, Wilmington, and all other black areas that were self-sufficient, right? You're right. So, given that we live in a capitalist country, what are we going to do about it? OMG, Miss Leslie, Miss Leslie, were you with me on Instagram a little while ago? I didn't announce it. I just decided to come on here while. But you catch the replay, Miss Leslie. Given that we live in a capitalist country and capitalism isn't showing any signs of budging, because now we got trillionaires even, can we imagine that we can have some other game that's not capitalistic? Or what? So again, my thing is, we all have a role to play and we can't hate on each other. The one who's the check writer, who has more money, let's just say the person who's really rich and has money, it has the ability to write the checks, they don't hate on the ones who don't have money, who are in the street, throwing the rocks. And the ones who are courageous enough to be in the street protesting, they don't hate on the corporate person either, because it's the corporate check. If I can, when you get arrested, I can come get you out of jail. How much is the bail? Bail's $5,000. Here's $20,000. I get 4 of them out. We need that. I don't know if you have heard this about the role that Harry Belafonte played in the civil rights movement and helping Martin Luther King Jr. Harry Belafonte being, a very famous actor and singer, right? All kind of privilege. He was a good-looking, very famous singer. Everybody loved Harry Belafonte, actor. And he basically put his career on hold. Really, it kind of stopped his career to join the movement. But really, he was like physically showing up in places, but he was also able to write checks. He was also able to pay Dr. King's bills. Because can you imagine? How's Coretta and the children eating? They still got to eat. They got a mortgage or rent and food. They got bills. Martin Luther King ain't getting no check, right? So Harry Belafonte stepped up in a lot of ways to help out there. Still have to practice capitalism, but also have to maneuver and practice ways to keep what we acquire. Yes, Tajiri. God, I guess I'm getting tired. I still got to go grade papers, y'all. Got to get off here and go grade some papers. Tajiri, still have to practice capitalism, but also have to maneuver and practice ways to keep what we acquire. Right, so our money is not leaving our neighborhoods all the time. And to instill in ourselves and our young people why it's important. So we don't just casually spend our money like, oh, it doesn't make any difference. Oh, well, it was just easier. Oh, I didn't want to do, Because we look at Jeff Bezos at Amazon, he's a trillionaire. Elon Musk at Tesla, trillionaire. Now we have a new level of wealth called trillionaire. So we need to be about building our wealth. And I frankly think that's the next stage of our communal collective empowerment. I understand we have to practice capitalism, but to be real, that it has done more damage to us as Black people than what's good has done. Yeah, well, capitalism is not neutral. I always ask my students this and have them write about it. Capitalism is not neutral. It inherently creates it inherently creates an underclass, right? Well, I've enjoyed this time together, y'all. But as I said, I gotta go grade some papers. So thank you. Like, share, support. Join me on Instagram if you're not already. It's at Dr. Darnise on Instagram if you're not already joining me there. I'm also on Facebook, but mostly I don't really do Facebook Lives that often anymore. But hey, if you're on Facebook, you can find me there too. But again, I appreciate y'all. I'm going to call it a night and wish you all a good Sunday evening and a good week as well. Kathleen, thank you. It's always a pleasure listening to you. Thank you. I hope that I give people something to think about and some ways of contributing. That's what I do. I always say I'm a teacher. I'm helping to uplift the consciousness as best I can from my little spot. Issachar Bay, when you gonna come on here and do something too? I know you have your center, but where can people find you, Issachar Bay, on these internet streets? He might be writing. Issachar, are you writing? Before I end this. Thank you, Pearlie and Tajiri and Kathleen. Thanks for being my conversation partners. Thank y'all. Okay. All this time, people have just been blowing up my phone. I got all these text messages coming in.